Here's what I mean. Let's just say there's news about what Trump tweeted today or something. Or there's news from Ukraine. Or there's news from the United Nations. Something. There's some news event. It's spread. The news spread. But there's one expert that you trust. There's an analyst, there's a scholar, there's a researcher, there's a geopolitical thinker, etc., etc. You're like, okay, everybody's talking about this event, but I don't want to hear from a 14-year-old what they think and a TikToker. I want to go to this expert. I want to get their opinion on how do I understand this event? Everybody knows the event happened, but that analyst, that thinker, that intellectual, they will give you a perspective nobody else could give you because they have a deeper understanding of the politics, the economic undercurrents, the social, et cetera, et cetera. You understand? I have certain friends that work in certain governments in higher levels, right? And something's going on in that country. And I watch the news and I'm like, what's going on? And I call them and say, no, that's not what's going on. Let me tell you what's going on. Because I was in the meeting with the generals and this is what they were talking about, etc. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. The news tells you one thing, but the people on the inside have a different story. You understand? So there's the idea of expert opinion on something, right? Even if it's the same event, do we all understand the same event the same way? No, we don't. That depends on our level of knowledge, our level of understanding. Now think about this. There's an event that happened in the Prophet's life. Who's about to comment on it? Allah is going to comment on it. Allah is going to reveal certain ayat talking about that event. In other words, it's not that we have to understand the ayats better by understanding the event. No, you can't understand the event unless you understand Allah's ayat. Allah's ayat are the commentary on how to understand that event. So what we've done is we've reverse engineered this, and what we've done is let's understand the ayat by understanding the event. What I'm saying is, let's understand the event by understanding the ayat. The ayat are going to highlight the event in a way that no historian could highlight it. Not even the people that experienced it could highlight it. They couldn't figure out what's going on. Only Allah could. Only Allah could. I'll give you an easy example of that, and it'll come in handy for this surah too. It's Surah Al-Fath. When Hudaybiyah was signed, thousands of companions, hundreds, if not in the thousands of the companions were frustrated when the treaty was signed. They all witnessed the same event. They're all upset. They all see this as a loss. They're all angry, all of them, not with no exceptions. Everybody's upset. And the Quran comments on the same event. And the Quran comments and says, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. We've given you an unequivocal, undisputed, open victory. Before that ayah came, and the ayah came right after the signing, soon after the signing, when they're basically taking their walk of shame back to Medina. In the sense, that's how the Sahaba are feeling. It's a walk of shame. We came here to do Hajj, we couldn't even do Hajj. And Allah is revealing, we have given you the most open victory. There's no ayah in the Quran that describes victory in more explicit terms than Surah Al-Fath. But it doesn't look like victory to anybody. It looks like loss. It looks like humiliation. How is this victory? The Quran commented on something that no human being could understand the reality of, only Allah could. Now understand what Allah means when He says that the Quran is light. What is the function of light? Light helps me identify the reality of an object. If there was no lights on in here and it was pitch black outside, I don't know how far something is. I don't know how big something is. I don't know if there's a snake in front of me or a child in front of me. I don't know the reality around me in the absence of light. The Quran calls itself what? Light. What that means is the Quran is a means by which we can understand the reality of something. So when there's a seerah event and then the ayat come, the ayat are putting a light on that event that no history report can put. No other document can put. And so that's the ultimate lens by which to understand the event. That's the ultimate lens. Now, what we've done is, because we reverse engineered it, we're like, let's shed light on the ayat by these reports. Right? How are you going to shed light on light? Light sheds itself on everything else. It's not the other way around. And this has bad consequences in our understanding. We start getting gaps in our understanding because of that. So what I'm saying is, what's your process? First, first just look at the reports. First look at what are the historians saying. Then look at how is the Quran shedding light on this? How is the Quran talking about this event? But then there's the third. Now that the Quran talked about it, you have to ask yourself a really hard question. What am I supposed to learn from this? Okay, so there's this thing that happened, and then we know Allah talked about it. I get it, and this is how Allah talked about it. But in the end, the goal of all of it is my guidance, your guidance. That's the third step. What are the universal principles? What are the guidance? What am I getting from this that I'm supposed to take? What's my take home? What's my takeaway? Because the takeaway cannot just be interesting information. The takeaway cannot just be, I learned a lot about history. That can't be the takeaway. We're going to go through a lot of history this month. We're going to go through a lot of ayat, a lot of tafsir, a lot of, commentary. That's a lot of information, but that's not the takeaway. That all that hard work, so we get the best takeaway we can. If you don't do this step 3, you missed the whole. There's no. You cooked everything, you didn't eat it. Right? You got no nutrition out of it. It's delicious food, but you didn't consume it. Right? So this is the ultimate objective. The third piece is the ultimate objective. And in one way, you can say that 1 and 2 are tafsir, and 3 is tadabbur. That's another way to think about it. 1 and 2 is the study, and 3 is, well, what does this study mean for us? That's contemplation. That's contemplation, because we're supposed to study the Quran and we're supposed to contemplate the Quran. Okay, so this is a process that I want you to become familiar with. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the controversial marriage and why this controversial marriage of the Prophet ﷺ to Zainab radiallahu anha, our mother, is at the center of this surah, and how we will see that this is a huge gift of Allah to this ummah, this marriage. And he was married to, in his lifetime, 11 women, 11 mothers of the believers, right? But this one marriage is a special gift of Allah recorded in the Quran for this ummah, and we're going to see why. So everybody's looking at it as controversy, right? And the Quran is going to take something that's controversial, and what's he going to turn it into? A blessing. He's going to reverse, and like it's light that without Allah's light, we wouldn't have seen it. You ever seen those UV rays or lights that you shine on them and now you can see things you didn't see before? Or X-ray vision? That's what the Quran's going to do. So even though I'm using the word controversial marriage from the shallow lens. But by the time we're done looking at it from the Quran's lens, it's going to be the blessed marriage. It's going to be something else entirely. And then we're going to be ready to take something away from it that's going to illuminate our lives, right? So it's repeated in the very beginning in ayah number 4, in the middle between 36 to 38, and at the end towards, because it's 73 ayat of the surah, it's all the way at the end in ayah number 69 also. And there's some references to it in 58 and 60. And what's interesting is I mentioned there are 4 major events, right, that are in this surah. And this reference comes up in the neighborhood of each of those events. Like there's the reference to this, and then another historical event. Then a reference to this, then another incident. So all the other events in the surah are kind of circling around the marriage of Zainab radiallahu anha to our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is kind of like the tie-in to all of them is what's happening. Okay, now we have to understand something about the history, the backdrop of the surah, and I'm going to lay some things out for you before I show you the next slide. Badr was our first military victory. Everybody knows that. Uhud was a pretty devastating loss, right? The Prophet himself sallallahu alaihi wasallam was almost killed. This was one, of course, in part because of the treachery of the munafiqun, the hypocrites, but this also had other consequences. It emboldened people to question the leadership of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because if he's the Prophet guaranteed victory from Allah, how could he lose? Right? How could he lose? And because we were confused by, we're following the Prophet of Allah and we lost, and the Prophet himself was almost killed. How could he be the Prophet of Allah and he's almost killed? Right? So what Allah do? Allah revealed almost 60 ayat of Surah Ali Imran, Surah number 3, to help us understand Uhud. just to process Uhud. The commentary on how to make sense of Uhud after it happened was given to the Prophet ﷺ in Al Imran after the Battle of Uhud. Okay. Now, even though now that we lost, let's understand the geopolitical climate. The Quraysh got their revenge because they lost in Badr. Now they got their revenge. Not only did they get their revenge, they're a little bit fired up. They're like, man, we got them, and they're down right now. They're injured. This is a good opportunity. We need to strike back and finish the job. But we know even if we win, we're not going to be able to finish them off. We need more than that. Ka'ab ibn Ashraf, on the other side, the Prophet ﷺ had treaties with Jewish tribes, right? And some of those Jewish tribes, they were treacherous against the Prophet ﷺ. They broke their treaties. And some of those tribes got expelled in the meantime from Medina. And some of those tribes vowed revenge against the Prophet ﷺ. So after Uhud, not only are the Quraysh emboldened, they're like, we should come back and fight more. The Jewish tribes that are in the proximity of Medina are now going around trying to rally everybody and say, look, this is a problem for you guys. It's also a problem for us. This Islam thing is spread like a virus in Medina. We need to end this problem. So you guys come from the outside. We'll take care of business from the inside. And it's going to be easy money. Let's just kill all these people and take all their lands, all their homes, enslave their women and children. Whatever we got to do, we'll just take all of it. And if the two of us are not enough, let's convince other tribes that this is going to be easy money, easy victory. Let's get us all together, which is Al-Ahzab, the different groups, different tribes, all thinking this is going to be an easy victory because we're all together. And now these legions of, tens of thousands are coming for the city of Medina. This is not a battle that's going to happen on the battlefield. It's going to happen inside the city. So this is civilian warfare. It's not battlefield warfare. They are completely okay with killing civilians. Badr and Uhud were on a battlefield. This is going to be inside the city of Medina, right? So the enemy is now okay with killing civilians, which is a lesson by itself, right? And it's not one of them that's okay with the killing of civilians. Ahzab, groups of them are okay with the killing of civilians because they each see some level of economic benefit for themselves. They're not even ideologically interested in killing the Muslims. They're just interested in killing the Muslims because it's going to bring them easy money. Sound familiar? Right? And they're all completely okay with it together. And so they come as an onslaught against the Muslims. Now, the only thing Muslims can do is dig a trench, by one Sahabi's suggestion, to keep them from entering the city and basically creating rampage and mass murder, right? So all the Muslims can do is survive this wave. And of course they do, alhamdulillah, right? By Allah's permission, Allah's going to comment on that in the surah. This final attack failed. Now, I want you to understand this failure and why this failure is so crucial from the Quraysh's perspective. The Quraysh are the big dog. They're the US of the time. Okay? If the US, if the Quraysh come and attack, other people might get more brave and join. Now that they couldn't get far, they lost, or they didn't win, rather. It's expensive to come out and bring your military. It's expensive to pay for your military convoys, their food, their supplies, their water, their animals, right? Their upkeep, their housing, and all of it, and tending to the sick, because they're all camped out in the desert outside Medina. It's a campgrounds. So they have to build an entire base and stay there for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. It gets more and more and more expensive. And all those tribes that joined, they joined because it's going to be easy money. So it's going to get a good return on investment. But now they're losing money by the day and there's no return on investment. They're losing all this cash. And eventually winds come and campfires turn over, animals die, and food gets destroyed and sickness spreads. And they're like, oh, you know what? Forget it. I'm out of here. One by one, the tribes, some of the tribes that were coming in for easy monies, they start slipping away. This wasn't worth it. This was a bad idea. This was a bad investment. Eventually, Quraysh pulls back too. They can't hold on to the siege. When they pull back, it's not the small tribes that lose credibility. Who actually loses credibility? Quraysh. And the Quraysh now know the next time they ask, hey, let's get together and kill Muslims, people aren't gonna, yeah, we did that already, thanks. We're not doing that with you again. That already cost us a lot of money and it was a big waste of time. No, thank you. We're done with that. So now they don't have the kind of clout and the kind of influence that they had before this humiliating loss. This is the nature of big powers.